Hi, Yuka.
Hello, Inka.
So we are taking a look at that far-reaching report on European competitiveness. A year after that report came out, Mario Draghi says the bloc is falling further behind its peers.
Yeah, Mario Draghi, the former head of the European Central Bank, has warned that the EU's growth model is fading fast and sharply criticised member states for their slow response and complacency. With Donald Trump's tariffs biting and trade deficit with China widening, Draghi says that every challenge he had pointed out in his report a year ago has worsened, with no clear path to financing necessary investments. Luke Traeger has more.
For Mario Draghi, the European Union's falling behind both the United States and China, and governments have failed to implement enough of the recommendations the former European Central Bank chief made a year ago.
Europe's citizens and companies are disappointed by how slowly the EU moves. They see us failing to match the speed of change elsewhere. They are ready to act, but fear governments have not grasped the gravity of the moment.
Draghi made 383 recommendations in his report last September, but only around 11% of them have fully gone into force, according to a European think tank. Now he wants the bloc to be less complacent and act in unity, slashing red tape and avoiding a slide into protectionism. The EU has made certain strides, notably in defence and collective rearmament given the threat from Russia. However, it's also been dealing with an overhaul in global trade following the arrival of Donald Trump and his tariffs earlier this year, and high energy prices. Natural gas is nearly 4 times more expensive in the EU than the US. That's going to have a constraining effect in one area Brussels is still proud: the computer and artificial intelligence revolution.
This is precisely where Europe had failed 30 years ago, when our companies were too slow to digitalize and to go online. This time, Europe is not playing catch-up. We are among the front runners.
There too, Draghi had criticism. Beyond AI electricity demand set to rise 70% by the end of the decade, data protections rules are still too cumbersome and are creating costly delays for EU firms.
Well, next, Yuka, the US Federal Reserve has started their 2-day meeting and is widely expected to cut interest rates.
Well, the overwhelming expectation is for the Fed to lower rates by 0.25%, with some seeing the possibility of a 0.5% cut. It would be the Fed's first rate reduction since December and would bring its benchmark rate to around 4.25%. This comes as the US Central Bank faces unprecedented political pressure from President Donald Trump. Its 7-member board has a new governor handpicked by him and an existing governor he has sought to fire. On Monday, an appeals court upheld an earlier ruling and said Lisa Cook, who Trump accused of mortgage fraud, could stay on the job. On the same day, the US Senate confirmed Trump's economic advisor, Stephen Miron, to take up a vacant seat on the Fed's board. He becomes the first sitting White House official to join the Fed's board. Instead of resigning from the current position, he said he'd take a leave of absence. Democrats saw the nomination of Miron, who has called for less independence for the Fed in the past, as a threat to the institution. President Trump boasted Miron would wield influence over the Fed's chairman. Let's take a listen to both.
Moran will be nothing more than Donald Trump's mouthpiece at the Fed. He has no independence, no sympathy for American families and businesses suffering from his policies.
He'll have a big influence on this when too late getting his rates down, I guess. Who knows? You never know with too late, but he's done a lousy job. The rate should be much lower, much lower.
Well, you can take us through the day's trading action.
Well, markets are moving cautiously this Tuesday ahead of the Fed's rate decision tomorrow. Wall Street is trading on a slightly weaker note, with the S&P and the Nasdaq both flat, as you can see. This after rising to record levels in recent days in anticipation of a rate cut. European bourses closed the day deep in the red earlier this Tuesday. The pan-European Stoxx 600 index finished at a 1-week low. Frankfurt DAX sank nearly 2%.
And we're turning to India now, where record monsoon rains have devastated the region's agriculture.
Well, ongoing floods have hit neighbouring Pakistan particularly hard, leaving 2.5 million people displaced there. But heavy rains since last month have also wreaked havoc in India, destroying crop in the country's agricultural heartland, often dubbed India's breadbasket. August Hackinson has more.
They woke up to find their worst fears realized. Their farms ravaged by the worst floods in more than 3 decades. And their village in ruins.
People did not realize that so much water would come. Then it rose too quickly. We suffered heavy losses. Some people lost their livestock, rice, food, bedding, everything.
This small town is in Punjab, one of the hardest hit Indian regions by this year's monsoon rains. It's often called the country's granary, as it's the largest supplier of rice and wheat to India's food security program. Analysts say this year's losses are unlikely to threaten those supplies thanks to large buffer stocks. But exports of premium rice, already hurt by punishing US tariffs, are expected to suffer even more. With hundreds of acres of basmati rice farmland swallowed by the floods, uncertainty reigns.
We used to earn a living by working in the big landlord's fields, but now they're all gone. What will we do now? We've not received any money so far to return home. Now winter is approaching. Where will I take my children?
Last week, local authorities dismissed reports of an already existing wheat shortage in the province, insisting that sufficient stocks were available. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has announced a relief package for the region worth around 180 million US dollars.
And that's it from the business desk for now.
Great stuff. Yuka, thank you so much for that. Yuka, we're there with the latest in the world of business.